Kevin Spacey, a very deflecting narcissist. I originally wrote about the allegations facing Kevin Spacey at the beginning of November in 2017. At the time, it was revealed that Kevin Spacey is gay. Well, who'd have thought that, eh? Ordinarily, somebody famous explaining that they are gay is not particularly a huge matter. However, Spacey made it so through a piece of narcissistic manipulation. Many have actually seen the manipulation and recognized it as such at the time, but they didn't actually realize what actually lay behind the step that had been taken. It does, however, provide a stark example of the behavior of a narcissist because it exemplifies the narcissist twin lines of defense. Anthony Rapp, an actor, accused in 2017 Spacey of sexually assaulting him all the way back in 1986. Rapp was just 14 years old at the time, and Spacey was 26 years old. At the time of the allegation, Spacey gave a response, and in just 2 paragraphs, it was laden with indicators of his narcissism. He stated, "I have a lot of respect and admiration for Anthony Rapp as an actor. I'm beyond horrified to hear his story. I honestly do not remember the encounter. It would have been over 30 years ago, but if I did behave as he describes, I owe him the sincerest apology for what would have been deeply inappropriate drunken behaviour, and I am sorry for the feelings he describes having carried with him all these years." This story has encouraged me to address other things about my life. I know that there are stories out there about me, and that some have been fueled by the fact that I have been so protective of my privacy. As those closest to me know, in my life I have had relationships with both men and women. I have loved and had romantic encounters with men throughout my life, and I now choose to live as a gay man. I want to deal with this honestly and openly, and that starts with examining my own behaviour. In these 2 paragraphs, you have the encapsulation of the narcissist twin lines of defence. First of all, denial. I honestly don't remember the encounter. Of course, it carries with it significant plausible deniability, because it refers to an event that took place over 30 years ago, and therefore memory is apt to be fallible. Secondly, a further manipulation was deployed, and in this instant, it was the common narcissistic tactic of deflection. Spacey revealed at the time that he's a gay man. No problem with that, and not really a surprise. Many people would have suspected as such. But this apparent revelation was made to deflect from the fact that he's accused of certain behaviour, and to deflect from the fact that the act is actually a serious sexual crime against a child. It also embodies something which is often used as an object of ridicule concerning narcissists in terms of, enough about you, let's talk about me. Spacey has demonstrated that his apparent concern for Rapp, which is indeed tissue thin, and his apparent concern for his own behaviour towards Rapp, is transparent and manufactured. There is no concern. It is false contrition. His statement demonstrates that he's far more concerned about the issues surrounding him, his sexuality, and the allegations that threaten his control, and that he wishes to deflect from Rapp and make it all about him. It also shows a common element in certain schools of narcissists, namely false contrition. There are apologies that are offered, and the word sorry is used, but while Spacey instinctively recognizes the need to create the appearance of contrition, it isn't genuine, because his second paragraph completely undermines and erodes the essence of the supposed apology. So, what narcissistic indicators are evident in this statement? Entitlement. I am entitled to use this as a platform to make it all about me. Lack of accountability. I deny it happened, and if it did, then I am not accountable because of who I am. Lack of emotional empathy. No consideration in the sexual assault for rap, no consideration for rap as to the manner of this statement, no consideration for other victims of sexual assaults, no considerations for those who are homosexual, since he has then linked homosexuality with child abuse, which is something that a number of commentators at the time picked up upon. He utilises the twin lines of narcissistic defence, and he exhibits false contrition. Zachary Quinto saw straight through the deflection, as he commented at the time, not by standing up as a point of pride in the light of all of his many awards and accomplishments, thus inspiring tens of thousands of struggling LGBTQ kids around the world, but as a calculated manipulation to deflect attention from the very serious accusation that he attempted to molest one. If Spacey was genuine about coming out, why hadn't he done it sooner? He'd had plenty of time to do so. No, it was used as a convenient opportunity to attempt to deflect from the threat to control posed by Rapp's allegations and coverage of the same thereafter on a wide world scale. Mr. Quinto noticed the manipulation, but was unlikely to be aware of what was governing it. As to the situation with Harvey Weinstein, two similar threads emerged with regard to Spacey, namely, other victims coming forth with allegations, and the observations that people actually knew about Spacey's behaviour and had done so for a long time. Former US news anchor Heather Unruh made reference to Spacey assaulting a loved one. A lady named Nadine West claimed that a friend of hers was groped by Spacey when he was working at the Old Vic in London, referring to Spacey as one who was known as one to always avoid. Daniel Beale, who was 19 years old and working as a barman in the United Kingdom, claims Spacey flashed him and commented, "It is big, isn't it?" And when Beale didn't accept his advances, Spacey offered him a £5,000 watch to keep quiet. Beale explained that when he was serving Spacey, he kept touching Beale's hand in a weird way, that Spacey asked him if he smoked weed, and said that he, Spacey, had loads in his room at the hotel, and invited Beale to go to his room. The remarks around weed and a creepy man hitting on somebody young and vulnerable might make an interesting part of a film, say, I don't know, American Beauty, anybody? These three allegations, if correct, support showing that Spacey is a narcissist. He shows a significant sense of entitlement, no boundary recognition, an absence of emotional empathy, no sense of accountability, and grandiosity. Look, here's an expensive watch. Take it and keep it, but keep your mouth shut. It also evidences the need to assert control and the need for fuel through the reactions of the victims and the maintenance of the power dynamic, i.e. control, in favour of Spacey as the narcissist. When Mr. Beale rejected Spacey's overtures, this will have wounded Spacey or amounted to challenge fuel. But Spacey didn't erupt with heated fury or flounce away with a silent treatment. Instead, he shifted to the assertion of control by bribery and charm. Back in 2010, Spacey stated during an interview, "I think what we have seen in terms of gay teenagers committing suicide because of bullying is anguishing. I think young people, if they are feeling like they are confused, need to know that there are people to talk to and that there are places they can go and not feel alone," said Spacey. "But I feel that they have just as many rights as I do not to be bullied, and I don't understand people who say, well, this is a terrible thing that is happening to this young person whose life is being exposed, and then turn around and do it to another person. People have different reasons for the way that they live their lives. You cannot put everyone's reasons in the same box. It's just a line I've never crossed and never will." This statement, which can now be seen against a backdrop of allegations of inappropriate sexual behaviour, reinforces the narcissistic personality at work here. There is the cognitive empathy on display by talking about the situation of another. The maintenance of the facade, in terms of being seen to care about others, and the victim mentality of the narcissist. I feel they have just as many rights as I do not to be bullied. Furthermore, it evidences the hypocrisy and compartmentalization which narcissists engage in. Spacey has bullied people, often those in a weaker position to him as a huge Hollywood star, yet notably does he ignore this behaviour. He states his line that he's never crossed and he never will. This might actually evidence a lack of awareness as to what he is, that he truly sees nothing wrong in what he has done, and therefore his self-defending narcissism automatically rejects any notion of accountability. Or, alternatively, he does know what he has done. But he doesn't care, and he sees it as a convenient opportunity to tell a known lie, because it serves him so well to do so. A further accuser, Tony Montana, a documentary filmmaker, said that Spacey groped him in the Coronet pub in Los Angeles in 2003. He says he was in the bar working when Spacey showed up with a number of his friends. Montana states, I went up to order a drink and Kevin came up to me and put his arm around me. He was telling me to come with him, to leave the bar. He put his hand on my crotch forcefully and grabbed my whole package. Montana alleges that a drunk Spacey told him, this designates ownership. Once again, this behaviour evidences no boundary recognition, a sense of entitlement and a lack of accountability, with no empathy for the person he is groping. His own words also evidence his view of Mr. Montana belonging to him. We regard people as objects, we regard people as our possessions, and therefore this comment-based Spacey, if correct, underpins Spacey's view as a narcissist. Clearly, since he was apparently drunk, his thoughts emerged as a spoken word. A further individual, speaking under the alias John, alleges that when he was 16 years old, he was working with Spacey at a summer theatre in the 1980s. He explained that Spacey was apparently sobbing from his bed, which John recognised as manipulation to try to get John to join him in bed by doling out a pity play, a well-known narcissistic manipulation. John didn't join Spacey, but then awoke to find Spacey draped around him, his head on his torso, and his arms wrapped affectionately around him. Once again, there is a failure to recognise the boundary, a sense of entitlement, and the need to assert control. It doesn't end there. There have been in the past allegations. A show business website ran emails from those who alleged that Spacey had targeted them. All of them were young men. Further allegations include a man who recounted being at the Sundance Film Festival in 2003 and explained, I felt a hand on my bum at the Martini Bar. The hand belonged to Spacey, he said, who invited him to a swanky industry party. A source from New York said a friend texted him from a bar to say, Kevin Spacey is here, and he has his hand on my thigh. Another New Yorker recalled a friend telling him how Spacey chatted him up in a bar, rubbing his knee before inviting him to a party. An ex-waiter at a smart Chicago restaurant said a male colleague was once invited by Spacey back to his hotel suite for a party that rapidly evaporated when the star asked everyone else to leave. Aware of the actor's intentions, the waiter thanked him for the nice evening and left. In another alleged incident, Spacey was at Harvard University for a function in the late 1990s and later propositioned a gay male undergraduate in a bar. A repeated pattern of targeting individuals, using his status and position of power to procure a sexual engagement with these individuals. Of course, as you know, what was really behind this was a narcissist identifying victims from whom he would gain fuel as a consequence of their responses. As you would expect, a narcissist of Spacey's calibre engages in careful facade management driven by his narcissism, such as praising Venezuela's former socialist leader, Hugo Chavez, being on the streets of Belarus to support the democracy movement, and to set up a charitable foundation to enable young actors to break into show business. All of these acts are manufactured to portray an apparently caring and compassionate individual. And again, I point out to you that just because somebody engages in these supposedly acts of compassion, philanthropy, activism, and charity, it doesn't mean that they are actually an intrinsically good and empathic person, and you really ought to stop being fooled by this. Spacey's behaviour is clearly a facade, since such an individual if empathic and compassionate, wouldn't engage in all of the other behaviours that have been brought to light, not by one individual but several, and it wouldn't be a surprise to find further incidents coming to light. When these allegations about Spacey all came out, filming was suspended on the 6th and final season of House of Cards. The show's production company had implemented an anonymous complaint hotline, crisis counsellors and sexual harassment legal advisors for the crew. In 2012, someone on the crew shared a complaint about a specific remark and gesture made by Kevin Spacey. Immediate action was followed, taking a review, and the producers of the programme were confident the issue was resolved promptly to the satisfaction of all involved. The show had been due to end in 2018, and the season was shortened from 13 episodes to 8, and Spacey was removed from the cast in his role as executive producer. The Gore Vidal biopic, Gore, starring Spacey, which was set to be distributed by Netflix, was cancelled, and Netflix went on to sever all ties with him. Spacey was due to appear in All the Money in the World as industrialist J. Paul Getty, another narcissist. However, his scenes were cut, and Christopher Plummer replaced him as Getty in the reshoots. In an interview with Variety, Plummer said, "It's really not replacing Spacey, it's starting all over again." The International Academy of Television Arts and Sciences reversed its decision to honour Spacey with the 2017 International Emmy Founders Award. On November 2nd, 2017, Variety reported that Spacey's publicist, Stacey Wolf, and the talent agency, Creative Arts Agency, ended their relationships with him. On the 24th of December 2018, Spacey uploaded a video called Let Me Be Frank on YouTube. In the video, Spacey, while in character as Frank Underwood, the role he had portrayed in House of Cards, appeared to deny the allegations against him. He faced serious criticism by a number of people. This evidences a need on Spacey's behalf to assert control with regard to the allegations being made against him, which of course threatened his control, and he draws fuel from the comments posted to the video and coverage within the press, alongside his own thought fuel arising out of what people would believe. This, of course, all resulted in serious ramifications for Spacey, who has in effect not worked ever since the allegations came out. Monetarily, never going to be a concern for him, but of course, as a narcissist, the failure to receive the recognition and adulation that he once wanted, along with the rejection by individuals that had once courted him so readily, amounts to wounding and challenges and threats to his control. With regard to the legal issues arising out of all these matters, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office stated in April 2018 that it would investigate an allegation that Spacey had sexually assaulted an adult male in 1992. In July 2018, 3 more allegations of sexual assault against Spacey were revealed by Scotland Yard in the United Kingdom, bringing the total number of open investigations in the United Kingdom to 6. In September 2018, a lawsuit filed at Los Angeles Superior Court claimed that Spacey sexually assaulted an unnamed masseur at a house in Malibu, California, in October 2016. In December 2018, Spacey was charged with a felony for allegedly sexually assaulting journalist Heather Unruh's 18-year-old son in Massachusetts in July 2016. Spacey pleaded not guilty, as you'd expect, to the charge on the 7th of January 2019. Unruh's son told police he was texting with his girlfriend throughout the alleged groping incident. Spacey's defence attorneys spent months trying to obtain copies of the text and the phone itself. In mid-May 2019, Unruh's son's personal attorney informed the court that the cell phone in question is missing. On June 4th, 2019, the defence learned that when Unruh gave her son's cell phone to police in 2017, she admitted that she had deleted some of the text messages. Later that month, her son filed a lawsuit against Spacey, claiming emotional damages. On the 5th of July 2019, he voluntarily dismissed the claims with prejudice. On 17th of July 2019, the criminal assault charge against Spacey was dropped by the Cape and Island prosecutors. When the anonymous massage therapist who accused him died, the last remaining criminal case against Spacey was closed. Of course, it has to be remembered that there is a difference between being able to satisfy the burden of proof in a criminal case and whether the actions actually took place. Given the response of Spacey, given the nature of the allegations and the repeated nature, they all accord with his behaviour as a narcissist. This is further represented by the fact that Spacey hasn't essentially worked since the allegations came to light. And yet, earlier this year, in May 2020, he demonstrates another aspect of his narcissism after he compares the pandemic to losing work after sexual assault allegations. Only a narcissist would compare the situation that has occurred to themselves as similar to that of what is affecting millions of people around the world as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. Spacey said that he empathised with people who'd lost their jobs as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Grandiosity, fake compassion. He said, "I can relate to what it feels like to have your world suddenly stop," pointing to the allegations of sexual assault and harassment that upended his career in 2017. Spacey made these comments from his home as a part of a streamed German business conference, the Bits and Pretzels Founders Breakfast, on March the 29th. Quite a world away from playing Kaiser Soze in The Usual Suspects, and, of course, as his role of Frank Underwood in House of Cards. Spacey went on to state, "I don't think it will come as a surprise for anyone to say that my world completely changed in the fall of 2017. My job, many of my relationships, my standing in my own industry were all gone in just a matter of hours." That will, of course, massive wounding to him. I don't often like to tell people that I can relate to their situation because I think it undermines the experience that they may be having. What he's really saying there is, I don't actually have much of a track record of exhibiting empathy. Reason being, although he won't admit this or recognise this, is because he's a narcissist. However, notwithstanding this, his narcissism has caused him to state that I actually don't do this because I don't want to try and speak for other people about their own experience. Again, exhibiting some kind of false empathy and fake compassion. However, he went on to state, in this instance, I feel as though I can relate to what it feels like to have your world suddenly stop. And so, while we may have found ourselves in similar situations, albeit for very different reasons and circumstances, I still believe that some of the emotional struggles are very much the same. And so I do have empathy for what it feels like to suddenly be told that you can't go back to work or that you might lose your job. And that is a situation that you have absolutely no control over. All of this evidence is a further pity play. Spacey's career, of course, imploded in 2017. And he still continues to seek to assert control as a consequence of making the comments that he did. Spacey explained in the conference appearance, "I was so busy defining myself by what I did or what I was trying to do when it all stopped, I had no idea what to do next, because all I ever knew was how to act. All I ever wanted to do was act. And when my career came to a grinding, screeching halt, when I was faced with the uncertainty that I might never be hired as an actor again, I had to ask myself a question I never asked myself before, which is, if I can't act, who am I?" Quite the irony. Who am I when all I am left with is just me? It's not something I ever thought I'd have to contemplate. Spacey, of course, continues to be wounded by, in effect, the cessation to his career. And that is why, in 2019, for the second consecutive Christmas Eve, he released a video in which he spoke in the manner of his House of Cards character, Frank Underwood. In effect, Spacey is triangulating listeners and viewers with that character as a means of trying to draw fuel and in order to assert control. Ultimately, Spacey has demonstrated the key behaviours of a narcissist through exhibiting a sense of entitlement to behave as he wants, in whatever manner he wants, with whomsoever he chooses. Objectification by treating people as appliances. Exhibiting a lack of emotional empathy for his behaviour towards other people. A lack of accountability for his behaviour. Grandiosity. Various manipulative behaviours. Triangulation, flattery, bribery, physical assault, threat. He's also utilised behaviours which demonstrate a lack of boundary recognition, and he's engaged in various aspects of the narcissistic dynamic, which includes compartmentalisation, objectification, seeing people as an extension of himself, exhibiting a need to assert control over them, responding when a threat to control manifests, the use of manipulative behaviours, hypocrisy, and others. Spacey has been lauded for his portrayal of many memorable screen characters such as Kaiser Soze, Frank Underwood, Dave Harkin from Horrible Bosses, and Lex Luthor. If you know those characters, you will recognise a common thread to them all. Perhaps, after all, Spacey finally fell prey to that criticism that certain actors are just playing themselves. And perhaps Kevin Spacey has been playing himself, but was using the part to deflect from what he really is as part of his narcissistic armoury. And as such, Kevin Spacey is a very deflecting narcissist.